about is to understand the question, how is our spirituality benefiting the world? How is our giftedness benefiting the community? How are we doing in terms of ensuring that our offices that we occupy in the spiritual realm are having a very real impact on the lives of people that are around us? Because we have many verses that speak about true religion is feeding the orphan and clothing the widow and so forth. But I want to understand, what are we to make? And I'm just ruminating around this with you, and I will definitely come to your comments as well. But we're going to have a discussion tonight, and I don't mind engaging with you, but I believe that we have a mandate to ensure that our giftedness is not self-centered, that our giftedness is not inward looking, that our giftedness is not for the sake of our families only, but that our giftedness is also for the community, that our giftedness is also for the nation. And so perhaps the question to ask tonight is whether we have looked down on spiritual giftedness because it has looked like it has no earthly relevance. Is it that we are people that are just gifted spiritually, that will come together and sing, that will come together and pray, but have absolutely no output into the world? Can you imagine the political, social situation of the woman with the issue of blood? And I want to get into it a little bit tonight, and it's okay if perhaps people might not necessarily want to have a discussion like this, but I believe it's necessary. Can you imagine the political, social, and economic situation of a woman that has gone to various people, that has gone to various doctors, and in this time has absolutely no hope except Jesus? And in that moment when they come, when that woman comes to Jesus, there's no other hope that she has. It is that they have exhausted the funds. Some theologians and preachers would tell us they've been to other doctors, they've been to other places, and they're coming to Jesus, a man. And this is a woman who is about to touch the hem of the garment of a man. Can we also understand that the question that Jesus asks could have put her in trouble? To say, who has touched me? Do you see, there's something that we must also understand about the very same Yeshua that we speak about. Beloved, Yeshua is a political figure. He is a political figure in as much as he is a spiritual figure. We've got to understand that, for instance, there are various commentaries that speak about the fact that there are parables that in the Jewish context mean something completely different to what we have actually said they do. For instance, you'd understand that the Romans were in charge of the Jews at the time of Yeshua being the leader of the sect of disciples. When it is that Yeshua then preaches the Sermon on the Mount, there are a few parables he makes, and one of them is he says, if someone slaps you, that you would turn the other cheek. Now, there are other commentaries that would say that, you see, Roman soldiers, if it was that they wanted to slap you, they would slap you with the back of the hand. And I'm just speaking a theory that I'd heard. They would slap you with the back of the hand to denote that you are less than what they are. That in fact, you are not of equal standing to them. And that only people that are of equal standing to them would receive the open palm, would receive a palm instead of the back of the hand. That the back of the hand was reserved for people that were less than what they are. And so when Jesus says to the Jews that after being slapped by the Roman, turn the other cheek, in fact, it is a political statement that the Jew is making to the Roman to say, I am forcing you to recognize me as an equal. I am actually defiantly protesting against the treatment that you are giving me and saying I deserve better. That if someone asks you to walk a mile with them, or commands you, a Roman commands you to walk a mile with them, that you would walk another in defiant protest of the fact that this person is not recognizing your humanity, is not recognizing how adequately you are made as well in the image of God, that actually to walk the extra mile is an act of protest against them. I just want to bring to you today, beloved, that your gifting, your sermons, your singing, your prayer, the very act of leadership in the church has got to be of benefit to the community. We have got to be people that have got to look upon Sharpeville. If we're spiritually gifted to see, if we're spiritually gifted to calm spirits, that we would go to Sharpeville and say, what is going on in this area and how can we calm it down? If there is a violent spirit that is going on in this country that needs to be calmed down, why are we not being called to doing so? Unless perhaps it is that our spirituality is fake. Unless perhaps it is that the God that we profess to believe in is not as powerful as we think. Perhaps it is that we need to understand God a little differently. Perhaps there's an impact that God needs to make in our lives and in the lives of the people around us, so that there would be tangible results to our belief. When was the last time our prayers did not just affect our lives and our actions, but rather affected the community that is around us? When was the last time we had a situation in the community that God answered through divine knowledge, through prayer that was adequately put into good use so that people got the solutions that they needed? Why have we stopped praying about our jobs? Why have we stopped praying about our relationships? Because is it that we believe that God can actually intervene in those things, or is our God dead? Is our God something to speak about just on Sundays? Or is our God something that we've got to actually acknowledge permeates everything in our lives? Is it that Christians perhaps have given up on God? And we've got to be honest. We've got to be able to be honest. Let's ask the question, where was God during Sharpeville? Let's ask the question, in 1948, as it were, when apartheid gained momentum, where was Adonai? Let's ask the question, is it as much as people would say that the God of the oppressor would still be the same God that the oppressed prays to, and that the oppressed would receive liberation from the same God that gave the oppressor power to oppress? We've got to ask those questions. We've got to ask the question, what, if any, is the power of any ancestral spirit that could not come against apartheid? That if there were people that were watching their descendants have serious challenges and could not intervene, what makes us think they can intervene in ours? We've got to ask seriously deep questions about where we are, about who we are, and about how we move forward from where it is that we actually are. As black people, we've got to ask our question, where is our hope? What is it that we ought to hope in? If we want to hope in God, then we must ask the question, why did he allow apartheid? If we want to hope in those who've come before us, we must ask the question, what did they do during apartheid? And is it that we are promised a life without challenge, or will the challenge make us stronger? But also we must recognize as black people that we've become too comfortable with pain. We've become too comfortable with obstacle and struggle. We've become too comfortable with problems, so much so that we do not know what it is to thrive and live in situations of black excellence without struggle, of black love without hardship, of black joy without pain. We must get to a place as black people where our spirituality doesn't just ground us, but grounds us in excellence and bears fruit, not just for us, but for the nations around us. It can be that if Africa is the most prayerful continent, that we remain the one that is taken advantage of over and over again. Where is God in the midst of that situation? Where are our ancestors and our foremothers and forefathers in the midst of that situation? We must ask the question, not because God cannot answer it, but because it causes our minds to recognize the entrapments that we have. It causes our brains to think about God bigger than just within the confines of church. It causes our minds to think around the ancestral more than just an ATM of Izinto Zama Zihambi Kahle. Our history as a country is one that is very bloody and very violent. And the question perhaps then must be asked, if the history is violent, will the present not be violent as well? Will the future not be violent as well? We have things called world wars. We have a World War I and a World War II, and perhaps currently we might be in a World War III. If our history as a people has been one of colonization and oppression, do we not think that the systemic links are going to last for generations? But then how are we going to rid ourselves of those things if our Christianity, if our spirituality is just for Sunday? How are we going to get ourselves to a place where we can understand what God means when he tells the Israelite nation in that book of Jeremiah, in the midst of exile, in the midst of difficult times? Firstly, he says to them, I know the plans to prosper you. There are plans to give you a hope. There are plans to give you a future. There are plans to give you success. But these are plans that I am telling you about while you are in exile, while you are not singing the songs of your fatherland because it's too painful to do so, while you are not in the place where the temple is. The temple may have been destroyed. I'm asking you to believe that indeed I have these plans for you, but what are they, God? The prophet doesn't ask that question, and it's something that we've got to ask. If it is that the black liberation theologian tells us that there's a God and there's a God who loves us, then we must ask the question, how does he love us? If there is a God who wants to see us better and he's put gifts inside of people, then we must also ask the question, are the people using their gifts for the furtherance of God's kingdom and his mandate here on earth? What does it mean to love God? What does it mean to see the fruits of God? Can we redefine blessing tonight? Can we say that if your community is not impacted by that which you call a blessing, then your blessing is not a blessing? Can we say that if your family is not better off in terms of your spiritual gifting, then we can't call what you have a spiritual gifting? Can we say that if the locality of the church wherein it is located, if that area is not made better by the existence of the church, then the church is simply a building where people come to ignore their problems, to run away from their sorrows and face them as soon as they leave the doors of the building? If I plant a church, or if God allows me to plant a church, what is the impact on the community around it? Am I there to extract from the people, to take their monies, to take their time and give nothing back? What use is it perhaps to build auditoria that are hundreds of millions of rands, but there are students within our midst that cannot go to school? What use is it for us to build monuments of cathedrals and greatness, but the world still languishes in poverty? Who decides in the mind of the congregant that I should give this money to this particular person and not to the beggar? If our spirituality does nothing to lift us as a people group, then our spirituality is very shallow. Then our spirituality actually is something that we've got to get rid of. Because it means that it's a selfish exercise. And we've got to be able to call ourselves out on that. But we've also got to be able to bring God into the boardroom, like we are doing tonight, to say, Mudimo, if you've allowed colonization to come, if you've allowed apartheid to come, prior to that, perhaps there were tribal wars that you allowed to happen. When is the time for peace? What does peace look like? If war is our natural state of being, what are you saying about us? What is the hope of the black person? And can it be found in God? Can it be found in a God who has allowed colonialism and apartheid? Can it be found in ancestors who seemingly were powerless against white people, seeming still today to struggle against systemic oppression, seeming still today to struggle against corruption and corrupt politicians, seeming still today to struggle against those who are in power, who continue to look down upon those that they lead? Where is the power? Who has this power? Is there a white God that is better than the black God? Or are we at a place where we need to reimagine how powerful we are as individuals ourselves? Something has got to shift, dear black nation. We cannot be at the same place that our forebears and our foreparents were. Not when God has lavished us with wisdom, as indeed God has. We are not the same people that come into a situation around race dynamics with an inferiority complex. We are not the same people that come and meet whiteness thinking it's superior. We understand that there is something intrinsically beautiful about us, black as we are. We understand that God has a purpose and a plan for us, black as we are. We understand that our worship is not limited. Our worship is not subservient. Our worship is not smaller than the worship of the white man. We understand that, in fact, the white man is not necessarily our enemy. We understand that we need to get to a place where we celebrate ourselves and we infuse ourselves into our lives. But how can we do that? And do we need permission to do that? And where do we get the permission to do that? Where is the hope? And these are the questions that we're asking God and that supreme cloud of witnesses today. We're asking this question to those who fought against apartheid and colonialism, who are seated in heavenly places with Christ and God. We're asking the question to a God who created black people. Is this our fate? Is this what you've called us to? to remember Sharpeville, to remember Marikana, to remember Langa, to remember Flat Plus, to remember John Foster Square, to remember uprisings across the country. Black people cannot be good for just memories of death. Our bodies are not sites of violence, but they are sites of beauty and excellence. They are sites of God's divinity. And it's about time that happened. It's about time that our spirituality infiltrated our political system. It's about time our spirituality bore fruit in our economic system. It's about time our spirituality actually proved itself in our social structure, so that it would be that those of us who are spiritual can actually be a light and not charlatans who continue to extract, much like the oppressor, from those who are desperate for help. That our spirituality would be something that gives hope to the hopeless. That our spirituality would not promise people castles in the air, and that they should celebrate poverty right now. That they should celebrate nonsense right now for a mansion in heaven. We are the kind of people that have got to ask God these questions. We've got to ask God, how can my gift be used in the furtherance of your kingdom for the benefit of my community?